The billionaire hired her to cook dinner. He had no idea she was still legally forbidden from telling him what was in the briefing she'd read that morning. Because in this kitchen, the woman in the chef's coat held a security clearance higher than the president of South Korea, higher than his entire board, higher than the 3 bodyguards kneeling in front of her right now. Her name is Annika Okafor. To the Kang family, she is the best private chef in Seoul, a discreet professional who signed a non-disclosure agreement along with her employment contract. What the agreement didn't cover was the other database she's still listed in, one that flags her presence in any country to a secure office in Virginia. This is the story of how a retired director of national intelligence for a West African nation came to be making jjajangmyeon for a tech billionaire's children, and the single phone call that shattered the fiction. 18 months before the bodyguards knelt, Annika Okafor was sitting in a secure briefing room in Abuja, deciding the fate of a multinational corporation. As director of the National Intelligence Agency, her signature could freeze assets, deny entry, and reroute global supply chains. She was 46. She had spent 28 years in the service, and she was exhausted, not by the work, but by the politics. The constant second-guessing by ministers who saw intelligence as a tool for business deals, not national security. The final straw was a directive to bury a report on a foreign mining company's environmental crimes because a cousin of the president sat on its board. She resigned the next morning. The official statement cited a desire for private life. The retirement package included a pension, a ceremonial handshake, and a lifetime obligation to protect every secret she had ever learned. Her security clearance didn't expire. It went dormant, a sword placed in a stone, waiting for a hand with the right authority to pull it free again. For 6 months she did nothing. She traveled, she read novels that weren't threat assessments, she slept through the night for the first time in decades, and she realized she was terrible at doing nothing. Her mind, trained to connect disparate dots, saw patterns in everything: the flight attendant's micro-expressions, the security lapses at a boutique hotel, the coded language between 2 businessmen at the next table. She wasn't living a new life. She was conducting unauthorized surveillance on her own retirement. Offer came through a former colleague, now a security consultant for ultra-high net worth families in Asia. "I have a client," he said over an encrypted line, "a Korean tech billionaire, self-made. He's paranoid about corporate espionage and food safety. He wants a private chef, but he wants one vetted to a level that doesn't exist. I told him I knew only one person who fit the profile and that she'd never say yes." Annika laughed. Then she heard the salary, then she heard the terms. Complete discretion, a private apartment in Seoul, autonomy over the kitchen, the sole requirement to cook 2 meals a day for the man, his wife, and their 2 young children. It was the ultimate cover, a role so mundane, so visibly subservient that no one would ever look for a former spymaster there. She said yes. She arrived in Seoul in autumn. The Kang residence was a 3-story penthouse atop the tallest building in Gangnam, with a bulletproof glass elevator and a view that commanded the city. Kang Yi-hyun, 41, founder of Icarus Systems, was a man of precise habits. He ate breakfast at 7:15, dinner at 7:45. He disliked cilantro. His son was allergic to pine nuts. His daughter would only eat food that was the color white. His wife, Soo-jin, was a former pianist who spoke in gentle apologies. The household staff included 2 housemaids, a driver, and 3 personal security details who rotated in 8-hour shifts. The bodyguards were ex-special forces, trained to see everything. They scanned rooms, monitored feeds, and assessed every visitor as a potential threat. They assessed Annika once on her first day and categorized her as part of the furniture, a black woman in a chef's coat. A domestic appliance that produced nourishment. The blindness was her first advantage. She established her rhythm, morning market visits where she inspected produce with the analytical eye of a forensics officer. The silent, stainless steel kitchen became her operations room. She learned the family's rhythms: Yi-hyun's tense phone calls about a hostile takeover attempt, Soo-jin's melancholy walks in the rooftop garden, the children's quiet obedience that felt more like fear. She listened, because listening was her oldest skill. Over searing scallops or simmering doenjang jjigae, she pieced together the landscape. Yi-hyun was in a silent war with a Chinese conglomerate called Zhulong Holdings. The bodyguards weren't just for show. There had been 2 attempted corporate hacks in the past month. The pressure in the house was a tangible thing, a low-frequency hum behind the quiet luxury. Annika cooked. She made perfect bibimbap, fluffy jun, sayak so tender it melted. The children began to smile at the table. Sujin started requesting recipes. Yi Hyun, for the first time in weeks, finished a meal without a single phone call. He looked at Annika one evening and said, "Your food is quiet. It makes the mind quiet." It was the greatest compliment she had ever received. She was lulling a dragon to sleep, one meal at a time. But the past is not a door you can close. It is a room you carry inside you. 3 months in, Annika saw a visitor she recognized. A man named Dmitry Volkov, a Russian logistics consultant she had flagged years ago as a potential facilitator for arms transfers. He was sitting in Yi Hyun's study, drinking whiskey. She served them sandwiches. Volkov's eyes passed over her without a flicker. She was invisible, but she heard a fragment of conversation as she left. "The shipment needs clean documentation through Busan Port. Your algorithms can provide that." Yi Hyun's reply was too low to hear. That night, Annika lay awake. Her professional judgment screamed that Yi Hyun was in over his head, tangling with a man like Volkov. Her current role demanded silence. She was the chef, not the consul. The first crack in her cover appeared on a Tuesday. Yi Hyun's son Minjun was showing her school project on his tablet, a map of the world. As he swiped, the screen glitched for a second, and Annika saw a familiar interface beneath the child's game. A data mapping software used almost exclusively by 3 intelligence agencies, one of which was hers. It was a tool for tracking network vulnerabilities. A child should not have had it as a hidden layer on his tablet. She casually asked where he got the game. "Appa's friend gave it to me," Minjun said. "The funny man with the big watch, Dmitry Volkov." Annika now faced a classic intelligence problem. She had a piece of data. Volkov was planting surveillance tools in the household, but no clear avenue to act. Telling Yi Hyun would require explaining how she knew what the software was. It would burn her cover to ashes. She decided on a lateral move. The next day, while the family was out, she accessed the tablet, not as a hacker, but as a mother helping with homework. She found the hidden layer. It was rudimentary, a data siphon designed to send network keys to an external server. Amateur work for someone like Volkov. She didn't remove it. Instead, she placed a digital lock around it, a cage of her own design that would cause the siphon to send false, looping data. It would look like a glitch. It took her 12 minutes. The Annika of a year ago would have had a team dismantle it and launch a counter-operation. The Annika of today could only cook dinner and silently fence the devil out of the nursery. Week later, the incident happened. Yi Hyun hosted a small dinner for potential investors from Singapore. Annika was serving dessert. Volkov was also there, uninvited but tolerated. The conversation turned to port security. Volkov made a joke about how easy it was to bypass customs in certain countries, listing a specific procedure used at the port of Lagos. It was a procedure that had been changed in a classified update 6 months prior, after Annika herself had recommended the change. It was a test. Volkov was watching Yi Hyun's face for recognition, but Yi Hyun just nodded politely. Annika, clearing plates, felt Volkov's gaze shift to her. Did her hand pause for a millisecond too long? Did her breath catch? She kept her eyes on the table, her face a mask of professional indifference. But the seed of suspicion was planted. In the spy world, there are no coincidences, only revealed connections. 2 days after that, Yi Hyun called her into his study. Not the kitchen, the study. He was standing at the window, his back to her. "Chef Okafor," he said, his voice neutral. "Your background check was, of course, impeccable, but my security team ran a deeper audit after our last guest expressed curiosity about you." He turned around. He held a tablet. On it was a redacted document, but the header was visible. It was from the U.S. Department of State's Diplomatic Security Service, a clearance verification request. "It seems your profile triggers automatic flags in systems my team cannot even access." The response they got was not a denial. It was a threat. It said further inquiries would be considered a hostile intelligence gathering operation. He put the tablet down. "Who are you?" Annika felt the old calm descend, the ice-water clarity of a blown cover. She could lie. She could stick to her story. But the document in his hand was a silent scream of her true identity, so she said the only thing she could. "I am the person who makes sure your children's food is safe." Everything else is a conversation you are not cleared to have. Yi Hyun stared at her. The power dynamic in the room, the billionaire and the chef, quivered and inverted. He was used to buying access. She was telling him some things weren't for sale. He dismissed her without another word. That should have been the end, a quiet termination, a discreet departure. But the following evening, as Annika was prepping the next day's meal, the three bodyguards entered the kitchen. Their leader, a man named Seo, spoke. The family is taking a sudden trip to Jeju. You will come, pack for 2 days, your presence is required. It wasn't a request. It was an extraction. Annika knew what this meant. Yi Hyun didn't want to let her out of his sight. He wasn't afraid of her. He was afraid of what her presence attracted, and he was right to be afraid. Because as their motorcade sped toward the private airfield, a black sedan with diplomatic plates fell in behind them, and Annika, looking out the tinted window, recognized the surveillance pattern. It wasn't Volkov. It was worse. It was an agency, and they weren't following Kang Yi Hyun. They were following her. Idan didn't try to hide. It was a statement. Inside the lead SUV, bodyguard Seo saw it in his mirror and keyed his comms. We have company, diplomatic plates, one vehicle maintaining distance. Yi Hyun in the middle car with his family tensed. Who are they? Seo's eyes flicked to the rear view to Annika sitting silently beside him in the passenger seat. Unknown, sir, but they are not following you. They are packing her vehicle. In that moment, the entire fiction of the trip collapsed. This wasn't a security precaution. It was an interception in motion. Annika spoke, her voice flat, operational. Do not attempt to lose them. Do not alter your route. Proceed directly to the airfield. Seo bristled. My orders are to protect the family. I decide the route. Annika didn't look at him. She was watching the sedan's reflection. Your orders are obsolete. That vehicle is from an allied intelligence service. If they wanted to stop us, they would have done it already. This is an escort, a hostile one. Any deviation will be read as aggression, and they are authorized to respond. The authority in her voice was absolute, forged in situations Seo could only imagine. He obeyed. At the private airfield, the motorcade pulled onto the tarmac where the Gulfstream waited. The black sedan stopped 50 yards away, its engine idling. 2 men in dark suits got out, standing by their car watching. They made no move to approach. Their posture was relaxed, confident. They were waiting for something. Yi Hyun shepherded his wife and children up the airstairs, his head swiveling between the jet and the silent watchers. He barked at Annika as she moved to follow. You stay with Seo. You're not coming. Annika stopped. She nodded once. The rejection was expected. As the jet's door closed and the engines whined to life, Seo motioned for her to get back in the SUV. We will return to the residence, he said, but as the SUV pulled away, the black sedan slid in behind them again, not following the billionaire, following the chef. Seo drove, his knuckles white on the wheel. Who are they? He demanded again. American, Annika said, probably CIA Station Seoul. The plates are a courtesy, a warning to local authorities not to interfere. Why are they interested in you? Annika finally looked at him. Because I know things that are currently in play, and my presence here in this household changes their calculations. She was a dormant asset that had just lit up on a foreign board. And dormant assets are either reactivated or silenced. Instead of returning to Gangnam, Seo drove to a safe house Icarus Systems maintained in the Seongsu district, a nondescript office building with a secure garage. The sedan followed them right to the entrance, then parked across the street. They were making their presence a cage. Inside a sparse, windowless room, Seo confronted her. My team's deep audit found nothing. No criminal record, no financial red flags, just a wall of classified markers. You will tell me what I am dealing with, or I will hand you to those men myself to protect my principal. Annika assessed him. Seo was a blunt instrument, loyal, operating in a world that had just become infinitely more complex. He needed a truth he could understand. 18 months ago, she began, I was the director of a national intelligence agency. My clearance gave me access to the secrets of my country, and through alliances, to the shared secrets of others. When I resigned, that access was technically revoked, but the knowledge in my head is considered a sovereign asset. Those men outside are here because a man named Dmitry Volkov is in Seoul, and my government, and theirs, believes Volkov is here to facilitate the transfer of weaponized algorithms, not just small arms. The kind of algorithms that could, for example, cripple a nation's financial infrastructure or shut down a power grid. CEO stared. Yi Hyun's company, Icarus. They specialize in network security and data optimization. Exactly, Annika said. Volkov isn't just using Yi Hyun for port access, he's targeting his core technology, and he saw me. He recognized me, or at least suspected. My presence threatens his operation. Those men outside are here to either debrief me or to use me as bait. They haven't decided which. The door to the safe house opened. It wasn't one of CEO's men. It was one of the suits from the sedan. He held up a credential wallet. Mr. CEO, a word outside, please. CEO, weapon at his side, stepped out. The conversation was brief. When he returned, his face was pale. They know everything, he said quietly. The make and model of every weapon in this room, the names of my men's families. They've frozen the digital access keys for this safe house. They say they are not my enemy. They say the enemy is Volkov and that he has already penetrated Icarus systems. They want to talk to you, alone. Annika stood. This was the moment of re-entry. The kitchen was gone. The market runs, the quiet meals, all of it evaporated. She was back in the world of secure conversations and terrible choices. She walked out into the garage where the American stood. He was younger than she expected. Director Okafor, he said, nodding. We prefer to do this at the embassy. I'm retired, she replied, and I'm not on your soil. You have no jurisdiction here. Volkov does, the man said bluntly, and he's acting with the tacit support of a hostile intelligence service. We have intercepts. He's made you. He knows who you are. He has issued instructions to neutralize the unexpected variable. That's you. Your principal's family is now collateral. We can protect them, but we need to know what you know. Annika processed this. The threat was now direct. Volkov wasn't just a businessman, he was an active measure, and she was in his way. What's the play? She asked. The American laid it out. They wanted her to wear a wire, to return to the Kang residence as if nothing had happened, to let Volkov approach her, to draw him into a conversation they could use. It was a standard bait operation, but it put the entire household in the crossfire. She refused. You're asking me to turn a private home into an intelligence battleground. The children are there. The American's expression didn't change. The children are already on the battleground. Volkov put spyware on the boy's tablet. He is already inside. We are offering a way to get him out. Back inside, Annika relayed the core of the proposal to CEO, omitting the wire. They believe the house is compromised. Your principal's trip to Jeju is a temporary fix. Volkov will still have access. We need to flush him out. CEO was furious. This is a corporate matter, not espionage. It stopped being corporate, Annika said, the moment Volkov used an intelligence-grade tool on a child's device. You are not equipped for this fight. It was the truth he needed to hear. His pride crumpled under its weight. He called Yi Hyun on a secure line. The conversation was heated. Yi Hyun from his hotel in Jeju was trapped. He couldn't return to a hot zone. He couldn't leave his company's core systems exposed. Annika heard his decision through the phone's tinny speaker. Do what you must to secure my home. CEO, you are to assist Chef Okafor. She is in command. The words hung in the air, in command. The billionaire had just handed operational control of his personal security to his private chef. The inversion was complete. CEO slowly holstered his weapon and gave Annika a stiff nod. The bodyguards, gathered in the room, followed his lead. They were now her detail. They returned to the Gangnam penthouse under the watchful escort of the black sedan. The atmosphere was now that of a fortress awaiting siege. Annika went straight to the kitchen, not as a chef, but as a tactical officer. She had CEO bring her the schematics for the penthouse's security system, the network logs, the visitor records. She saw it immediately. A backdoor in the system installed 3 weeks prior, around the time of Volkov's first visit. It wasn't just the tablet. The entire smart home system was vulnerable. Cameras could be looped. Locks could be overridden. She worked through the night, with CEO and a terrified IT consultant from Yi Hyun's company. They didn't remove the backdoor. They built a quarantine around it, a digital honeypot. Any use of it would now trigger an alert and feed false data to the user. It was the same principle she'd used on the tablet, but scaled to the entire residence. As she worked, she explained the concepts to CEO in simple terms. He began to look at her not with resentment, but with a dawning, awestruck horror. This was the ocean in which she used to swim. Dawn was breaking when the first test came. An alert flashed on her makeshift dashboard. The backdoor had been accessed. Someone was trying to loop the feed for the main living room camera. Right now, Annika and Sio moved. She stayed in the kitchen, monitoring. He went to the living room, performing a routine check as if unaware. On her screen, she saw the live feed freeze. The intruder was watching a still image of an empty room, while on her separate, clean feed, she watched Sio walk through the actual space. It was confirmed. They were under active surveillance. The phone in the kitchen rang. The landline. Annika picked it up. It was Volkov. His voice was smooth, cheerful. "Chef Okafor, I hope I'm not calling too early. I was thinking of stopping by today. I have a proposal for Yi Hyan, but I'd value your perspective first, given your unique background." The bait had been taken, but not by him, by her. He was coming for her. She played her part. "Mr. Kang is out of the city. I'm not at liberty to discuss his business. But we can discuss ours," Volkov said. "The security of the home, for instance. I have some concerns. I will be there in 1 hour." He hung up. The stage was set. Sio wanted to call the Americans to set the trap. Annika vetoed it. "If they swarm in, we only get Volkov. We need to see who he's connected to inside. We need the network." She gave instructions. The bodyguards were to be visible but not aggressive. She would meet Volkov in the living room. Sio would be posted outside the door. Every word would be recorded through a pendant she wore, a piece of jewelry provided by the Americans and activated with a tap. Annika changed out of her chef's coat. She put on a simple black dress. It was not a uniform, it was armor. At 10 a.m. exactly, Volkov was admitted. He smiled when he saw her. "You look different without the apron," Maury authoritative. He made himself at home, pouring a drink from Yi Hyan's bar without asking. "Let's not waste time. You are Annika Okafor, former DNI of the Nigerian National Intelligence Agency. You resigned over a matter of principle. Admirable. Now you work in a kitchen, a tragic waste." Annika remained standing. "What do you want?" "I want to offer you a job," he said. "A real one. My employers are impressed. They know you spotted the siphon on the boy's tablet. They know you've been poking around the home network. Talent like yours shouldn't be seasoning soup. It should be shaping the future." He was trying to recruit her. It was a breathtakingly bold move. "And what future is that?" she asked. "The future where the right algorithms control the flow of everything," he said, his eyes gleaming. Yi Hyan's Icarus code can be repurposed. It can make certain systems vanish from oversight. It can create blind spots, very valuable blind spots. He is too sentimental to see its true potential. You are not a sentimental woman. Here was the pivot. It wasn't just about theft. It was about turning Icarus's technology into a weapon of mass obscurity, to hide transactions, movements, entire military deployments. Annika felt cold. "And if I refuse?" Volkov's smile faded. "Then you remain a variable, and variables are eliminated. The family you've grown fond of becomes a liability in your story. A tragic home invasion, perhaps. These things happen." It was a direct threat, not just to her but to the children. The line had been drawn. Annika had what she needed, his voice, his offer, his threat. The Americans would have enough. She gave the prearranged signal, a touch to her pendant. But nothing happened. No sound of doors breaching, no shouts from Sio. Volkov watched her hand move and his smile returned, cruel now. "The pendant, yes. We detected the RF signal the moment you activated it. Your friends from the embassy are currently dealing with a rather convincing bomb threat 3 blocks away. They are occupied." He stood up. "You see, we have people everywhere, even in the embassy. You are alone." He was right. The plan had failed. The trap had been sprung on the trappers. Volkov took a step toward her. "The job offer is still open, but the terms have changed. You will come with me now, or I will have my man inside Sio's team put a bullet in the older bodyguard's head, and then we will take you anyway." He had an asset inside. The betrayal was total. Annika was unarmed, outmaneuvered. The kitchen, her domain, was 20 feet away. The knives were there, but Volkov was closing the distance. He pulled a small, non-metallic taser from his pocket. "This will not kill you, it will just make you very compliant." Then the door to the living room swung open, but it was Sio. It was Kang Yi Hyan. He stood there, having flown back from Jeju without telling anyone. His face was a mask of fury. In his hand was a heavy, antique jade paperweight from his study. Volkov turned, startled. "Yi Hyan, my friend, this is not what it looks like." Yi Hyan didn't speak. He looked past Volkov to Annika. He saw the standoff, the taser, the truth of it. He had heard enough from the doorway. It looks, Yi Hyan said, his voice dangerously quiet, like you are threatening a member of my household. He took another step into the room, and behind him, Seo and the other two bodyguards appeared, their weapons drawn, but their faces were twisted in confusion and anger. One of them was the traitor, but which one? Volkov recovered quickly. She is not a chef, she is a spy, she has been lying to you. Yi Hyan's gaze never left Volkov. I know what she was, what I want to know is what you are. He raised his voice. Seo, disarm him. Seo moved forward but hesitated, his eyes darting to his two comrades. The standoff was now a tangled knot of loyalty and betrayal inside the penthouse. Volkov smiled, seeing the fracture. He raised his hands, the taser still in one. This is getting messy. I think I will take my leave. He began to back toward the service entrance. No one moved to stop him. The uncertainty was paralyzing. Annika knew if he reached that door, he would vanish, and the threat would remain, festering. She had one card left to play, not a weapon, authority. She spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Stand where you are. The command was not shouted. It was delivered with the absolute, bone-deep certainty of a person used to being obeyed. It wasn't directed at Volkov. It was directed at the three bodyguards. Bodyguard Kim, she said, looking at the man on the left. Your wife's medical bills were paid in full last month by a shell corporation registered in Cyprus. You sold the access codes for the garage. The man's face went slack with shock. She turned to Seo. He is the asset, disarm him. There was no hesitation now. Seo and the third guard pivoted, grabbing Kim, wrestling his weapon away. The betrayal was identified, the knot cut. Volkov, seeing his protection evaporate, made a dash for the door. Yi Hyan moved to block him. Volkov swung the taser. Yi Hyan ducked, and the paperweight fell from his hand, shattering on the marble. In that moment of chaos, Annika moved, not to the door, to the large living room window, to the control panel for the smart blinds. She typed in a sequence, a code she had programmed during the night that had nothing to do with blinds. It was a distress beacon. A silent, encrypted scream sent directly to the black sedan that was, she hoped, still somewhere nearby. Volkov yanked the service door open and froze. Standing in the hallway outside were the two American suits. They had not been distracted by any bomb threat. They had been waiting. The older one held a pistol, aimed low. Dmitry Volkov, you are hereby detained for activities contrary to international security. Come quietly. The operation was over. Volkov was taken. The traitorous guard was subdued. The penthouse was suddenly, eerily silent. Yi Hyan stood amidst the wreckage of his paperweight, breathing heavily. He looked at Annika, then at the Americans now standing in his home. The reality of the world he'd been skirting crashed down upon him. His chef had just commanded his security, uncovered a mole, and called in a foreign intelligence service to make an arrest in his living room. The lead American approached Annika. Director, we'll need a full debrief, she nodded, but Yi Hyan found his voice. No, everyone looked at him. He was pale, but his jaw was set. She is my employee. She is under my protection. You will not take her from my home. It was a futile, territorial claim in the face of geopolitics, but he made it anyway. The American smiled thinly. She's not an employee, Mr. Kang. She's a material witness and a sovereign asset. And by the treaties your country has signed, we have the right to... He never finished, because Annika spoke again. I'm not going anywhere, she said. She looked at Yi Hyan, then back at the American. My priority is the security of this household. The immediate threat is neutralized, but the network that sent Volkov is not. You have your prize, now you will leave. I will submit a written deposition through the proper channels, not today. The American's smile vanished. You are obstructing. I am asserting control over my own testimony, Annika finished. A right afforded to me by my former rank. You may file a complaint with my successor in Abuja. Now get out of this man's house. A standoff of a different kind. The Americans needed her cooperation more than they needed a scene. After a long moment, the lead agent nodded. 48 hours, we will be in touch. They left, taking Volkov with them. And then there were four, Yi Hyan, Annika, and the two remaining bodyguards, Seo and his partner. The broken jade glittered on the floor. Yi Hyan walked slowly to his bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey with shaking hands. He gave one to Annika. He didn't speak, he just waited. Annika took the glass. The children, she asked, still in Jeju with their mother, safe? Good. She took a sip, The whiskey burned. Yi Hyun finally asked the question that had been burning since the study. Why did you stay? After I accused you, after I dismissed you to the car, you could have let them take you. You'd be in an embassy now, safe. Annika looked at the shattered jade. Because you have a son who likes my pancakes, and a daughter who is afraid of food that isn't white, and because a man who builds security algorithms should not be defenseless in his own home. She met his eyes. And because my grandmother told me to use my strong hands to hold people up, even billionaires. Yi Hyun stared into his glass. Then he did something extraordinary. He turned to Seo and the other guard, and he said, "From this moment, Chef Okafor's security clearance within this home is absolute. You will answer to her. Is that understood?" Seo, who had spent the last 12 hours seeing his entire professional understanding of the world dismantled, looked at Annika. He remembered the command in her voice, the speed of her mind, the way she had identified the traitor with a glance at Data. He had pledged his service to a billionaire, but in that moment, he recognized a different kind of authority, one that couldn't be bought. Slowly, deliberately, Seo knelt, not a bow, a genuflection. The other guard, after a shocked second, followed. They placed their weapons on the floor in front of them, a gesture of supreme submission. They knelt before the woman in the black dress, in the center of the billion-dollar penthouse. Yi Hyun watched, his own glass frozen halfway to his lips. The hierarchy of his world had not just been inverted, it had been shattered and remade. The chef was now the commander, the protector was now the protected. Annika looked down at the kneeling men. She did not tell them to rise. She simply said, "Secure the perimeter, then begin a full inventory of all personnel with system access. We are not done." But as Seo stood to obey, the main elevator chimed. The doors opened. It was Soo-jin, Yi Hyun's wife. She had returned early alone. She stepped into the foyer, her eyes taking in the scene, her husband and the chef standing over shattered jade, the bodyguards scrambling to their feet, the tension so thick it choked the air. Her gentle face filled with confusion, then dawning fear. "Yi Hyun, what's happening? Where are the children?" And from her purse, her phone began to ring. The caller ID read, "Unknown number." The silence after the storm was over. The storm was just beginning. Soo-jin fumbled for her phone, her eyes wide on the scene before her. Annika was already moving, her hand outstretched. "Don't answer that." But it was too late. Soo-jin, conditioned to politeness, had already pressed the phone to her ear. "Hello?" Her face already pale, drained of all remaining color. She didn't speak. She just listened. Then a small, choked sound escaped her lips. She let the phone fall from her hand. It clattered on the marble. From its speaker, a man's voice, digitally altered, echoed in the sudden silence. "You have 1 hour to comply, or the painting loses its sunshine." Yi Hyun was at his wife's side in an instant. "What is it? Who was that?" Soo-jin turned to him, her eyes hollow with terror. "They have the children." "That's impossible. They're with your sister at the resort." Soo-jin shook her head, a frantic, jerky motion. "My sister just texted me. She said the children were napping. That was 20 minutes ago." That voice, he described the painting Minjai made this morning, the one of the yellow sun. She left it on the balcony table in Jeju. He said the painting loses its sunshine. He's there, he's in the room. The world narrowed to a single terrible point. Volkov had been the visible threat. This was the hidden one. His capture had triggered a dead man's switch. Annika snatched up the fallen phone. The line was dead. She turned to Seo. "Get the resort on the line now. Do not alert security. Just get me the manager of the villa." As Seo scrambled, Annika faced Yi Hyun. "You need to call the police in Jeju." "No police," Yi Hyun snapped, his voice raw. "You heard him. 1 hour. Police will make it a siege. He couldn't finish the sentence. The resort manager came on the line, confused but polite. Annika took the phone. Her voice was calm, reassuring. "This is Kang Yi Hyun's executive assistant. We have a sensitive family situation. I need you to visually confirm the children are in the villa right now without disturbing them. Can you do that?" The manager, sensing the gravity, agreed. They waited. The longest 4 minutes of their lives. The manager came back on, his voice uneasy. "The villa appears empty, ma'am. The patio door is open. There is no sign of the children or their aunt. Should I contact security?" The trap had been sprung long before Volkov ever walked into the penthouse. The children had never been the collateral. They were the primary target all along. Soo-jin sank to her knees, a silent scream trapped in her chest. Yi Hyun looked at Annika, and for the first time, she saw absolute despair in his eyes. The billionaire was powerless. Annika's mind raced, shifting gears into a mode she had hoped never to use again: hostage resolution. CEO, get me everything on that villa, blueprints, staff lists, service schedules for the last 48 hours. She turned to Yi Hyun. They want something, they will call back with demands. When they do, you will stall. You will sound desperate, but you will not agree to anything until I tell you to. Do you understand? He nodded, a man clinging to a lifeline. Her own phone vibrated, a message from the American agent. Volkov is talking. He says the children are a failsafe. The demand will be for you. They want to trade you for them. Annika showed the message to Yi Hyun, his face twisted in confusion. You, why? Because I am the only one who can identify the higher-level controllers in Volkov's network. With me gone, the chain stops with him. I am the loose end they need to cut. The phone in Sujin's hand rang again. Same unknown number. Yi Hyun answered, putting it on speaker. The altered voice returned. 1 hour begins now. You will deliver the woman, Annika Okafor, to coordinates we will provide. She comes alone. You will recall your security team from Jeju. If we see any official presence, the children will be on a boat to a place you will never find. Do you understand? Yi Hyun's eyes met Annika's. She gave a single sharp nod. I understand, Yi Hyun said, his voice cracking convincingly. I need proof of life. Let me speak to my son. There was a pause, then the sound of shuffling. A small, terrified voice came on. Appa, it was Min Jun. Appa, the men said we're going on a boat trip, but I'm scared. The line went dead. It was enough. They were alive for now. The coordinates arrived via text. A remote dock on the western coast of Jeju, used primarily for fishing boats. The exchange was to happen in 53 minutes, an impossible timeline. Yi Hyun gripped the edge of the bar, his knuckles white. We can't do this. We can't give you to them. We don't have a choice, Annika said, her voice strangely detached. She was already planning. But we are not without leverage. They want me intact for questioning. They will not harm the children until they have me. That is our window. She turned to CEO. You have a team in Jeju? He nodded. 2 men. They were shadowing the family at a distance. Good. Tell them to locate the boat. Do not approach, just find it. And CEO, I need a weapon. He handed her a compact pistol from a hidden holster. She checked the magazine with practiced efficiency, a motion that seemed alien and natural on her at the same time. Sujin suddenly spoke, her voice a broken whisper. They took my sister too. She would never have let them. Annika went to her, knelt beside her. They likely used a uniform, a fake resort staff badge. It's not her fault. But her mind was elsewhere, calculating. A boat, a remote dock. This wasn't just a kidnapping. It was an exfiltration. They planned to take her and the children off the peninsula. She called the American back. The exchange is on Jeju, a boat. I need satellite overwatch on these coordinates, and I need it 10 minutes ago. And I need you to scramble a naval asset to intercept that boat once the children are clear. Can you do that? The agent hesitated. That's a significant ask. We'd be acting on Korean soil. You detained a man in a Korean billionaire's living room 30 minutes ago. Annika cut in. Do not cite sovereignty to me now. You want the network? This is how you get it. Or I walk into that dock alone, and your intelligence on this ends with me at the bottom of the sea. Your choice. There was a long silence. Then, we'll get you the eye in the sky. The Navy will try, no promises. It was the best she would get. Time was slipping away. Annika moved to the kitchen, not to cook, but to think. The familiar space was her command post. Yi Hyun followed her. You can't go, it's a suicide mission. It's the only mission, she replied, filling a small bag with items from the pantry: salt, chili powder, a roll of duct tape, improvised tools. They have your children. My life for theirs is an acceptable trade. Not to me, he said, the words bursting from him. You are not disposable. She stopped, looked at him. In my old life, Yi Hyun, everyone was disposable. Missions were built on acceptable losses. This is different. This is a kitchen, and in a kitchen, you protect your ingredients. You don't let the meal be ruined. It was the closest she could come to explaining her code. The phone buzzed again. CEO. My team found the boat. It's a 30-foot trawler, the Blue Gull, docked at the specified coordinates. 2 men visible on deck. No sign of the children or the aunt. They must be below. Annika processed this. A small crew. Good. Tell your team to stand by. When I give the signal, they move to secure the children. Their only job is extraction. They do not engage the hostiles unless fired upon. Understood. She had a plan, a bad one, but a plan. She would go to the dock. She would board the boat. She would demand to see the children before any transfer. Once she had visual confirmation, she would signal Sio's team to storm the dock. Chaos would ensue. She would use that chaos to neutralize the guards on board and get the children to safety. It relied on perfect timing, on the Americans providing distraction, and on a large measure of luck. They took a helicopter from the Seoul rooftop pad to a private airfield, then a jet to Jeju. The entire trip was made in crushing silence. Annika sat, cleaning the pistol again and again. Yi Hyun stared out the window. Soo-jin prayed quietly. As they landed, Annika's phone lit up with a secure image. It was a live satellite feed, courtesy of the Americans. The Blue Gull sat at the end of a long wooden dock. Heat signatures showed 2 on deck, 3 below. 20 minutes remained. They drove in a black SUV toward the coast. 5 minutes out, Annika had them stop. "This is where I go alone." Yi Hyun grabbed her arm. "There has to be another way." She gently removed his hand. "This is the way." She got out, slinging her small bag over her shoulder. She looked like a woman going to market, not to a hostage exchange. She walked the last mile down a gravel road, the sea air sharp and cold. The dock came into view. The Blue Gull bobbed in the grey water. 2 men stood on deck, watching her approach. They were professionals, armed, their postures relaxed but ready. She reached the foot of the dock. One of them raised a hand, stopping her. "Stop there. Identify yourself." "Annika Okafor, I'm here for the Kang children." The man nodded to his companion, who ducked below deck. He emerged a moment later, roughly pulling Minjun and his sister, Jae, up into the light. Their aunt, Soo-jin's sister, followed, her face bruised and tear-stained. The children saw Annika and cried out, but were quickly silenced. They were terrified, but unharmed. "Send them down the dock," Annika called. "You get me when they reach the road." The lead man smirked. "You come to the boat, we release them when you're on board." Standard and pass. Annika had expected this. She needed to get closer. She took a step onto the dock, then another. The wooden planks creaked under her feet. She was halfway there when she heard the distant but distinct sound of helicopter rotors. Not theirs, the Americans, or someone else. The men on the boat heard it too. Their composure broke for a second. They looked up. Annika used that second. She didn't run toward the boat. She dropped her bag and pulled the pistol, firing 2 shots into the water near the boat's bow. A distraction, not an attack. "Go now," she screamed at the children and their aunt. Sio's team, concealed in the tree line, erupted onto the dock, firing covering shots into the water. Chaos just as she wanted. The 2 men on deck ducked for cover, returning fire towards Sio's men. Annika sprinted the last distance to the boat, leaping onto the deck as it rocked violently. She landed hard, rolled, and came up facing the man who had been below deck. He was raising his weapon. She was faster. 2 shots. Center mass. He fell. The other man was pinned down by fire from the dock. The children and their aunt were running, scooped up by Sio's men and dragged toward the tree line. The first part of the plan had worked, but the helicopter was getting louder, and it wasn't American. It was a sleek, black private bird descending toward the beach. The man on deck shouted into a radio. "Abort, package is compromised, initiate scrub, a sanitization protocol." Annika's blood went cold. They weren't just going to flee, they were going to destroy the evidence. The boat, everyone on it. She lunged for the hatch, scrambling down into the cabin. It was empty except for a single, blinking device wired to the fuel line. A crude but effective bomb, 30 seconds on a timer, 29, 28. There was no time to disarm it. She turned, scrambling back up the ladder. The remaining guard was gone, having jumped into the water. She leapt from the boat onto the dock just as the black helicopter touched down on the beach. Men in tactical gear, no insignia, poured out. The timer hit 0. The explosion was a fist of heat and sound. The Blue Gull disintegrated in a ball of fire, shrapnel tearing through the dock. Annika was thrown forward, her world going white and silent. She hit the splintered wood, the breath knocked out of her. When her hearing returned, it was to the crackle of fire and the shouts of the new arrivals. They were fanning out, securing the area. These weren't rescuers, they were the cleanup crew, and they were now between her and the tree line where Sio had the children. She pushed herself up, her body screaming in protest. She was weaponless, the pistol lost in the blast. The lead operative from the helicopter saw her, pointed, and two men began advancing. Their intent was clear: no witnesses. Annika backed toward the burning wreckage of the dock, the heat blistering her skin. She had nowhere to go but the sea. Then a new sound, a deep, powerful thrumming from above. Another helicopter, this one military gray, swooped in low. A spotlight pinned the black-clad operatives. A voice, amplified and authoritative, boomed in Korean and then in English. "Stand down. This is the Republic of Korea Navy. Drop your weapons and lay face down on the ground." The Americans had come through. The cavalry was official, and it was Korean. The operatives froze, weighing their options against a naval gunship. They dropped their weapons. The gray helicopter landed on the beach. Armed sailors spilled out, securing the scene. Annika stood amidst the smoke and ruin, watching as the children were brought out from the trees, wrapped in emergency blankets, safe. Sujin's sister was sobbing with relief. Yi Hyun's SUV came skidding to a halt on the road, and he ran toward his children, collapsing to his knees to hold them. An agent in a dark suit, the American from Seoul, walked through the naval cordon toward her. He looked at the burning dock, the captured operatives, the reunited family. "You made a mess, Director." Annika wiped soot from her face. "I kept the ingredients safe." She looked past him to Yi Hyun, who was now staring at her over his children's heads. His expression was no longer one of despair or even gratitude. It was one of awe, tinged with a new, profound fear. He had seen the world she lived in, and it had burned a boat to ashes on his shoreline. The American lowered his voice. "Volkov gave us a name, the Controller. It's someone inside your old agency, someone you trusted. This wasn't just about your knowledge, it was a personal purge. You were the target from the beginning." The revelation landed like a physical blow. The conspiracy wasn't corporate or even purely geopolitical. It was personal, a betrayal from within her own house. The hunt had not been for Yi Hyun's algorithms, but for her, and it had used his family as the bait. The weight of that truth, the sheer venomous scale of it, was almost too much to stand under. She looked at the happy reunion, at the cost written in fire on the water. She had saved the children, but she had brought the inferno to their doorstep, and the man who had lit the match was someone she had once called a friend. The game was not over, it had just revealed its true name. And the name was vengeance. The name was General Aikji, her former deputy, the man who had poured her tea for 12 years, the man she had recommended as her successor. The betrayal was so intimate it felt like a surgery performed without anesthetic. On the beach with the naval police processing the scene, Annika stood perfectly still, letting the truth settle into her bones. The American agent waited for a reaction. She gave him none. "What do you need from me?" she asked, her voice stripped of all emotion. "Your testimony, your cooperation. We can bring him in, but we need you to make the case airtight." She nodded. "You'll have it." She turned away from him, from the smoldering dock, and walked toward the family. Yi Hyun rose to meet her, his children clinging to his legs. He searched her face, saw the new depth of hurt there, and understood that the danger had merely changed shape. "What now?" he asked. "Now," Annika said, looking at the children, "we go home, and I cook dinner." The return to Seoul was a silent procession in a government jet, provided by the Korean National Intelligence Service. The KNIS had been briefed, and they were not happy. A foreign intelligence operation, a firefight, and a blown-up dock on their soil. But the Americans had smoothed it over, trading favors and promising shared credit for the roll-up of Volkov's network. Annika was now an asset in a three-way negotiation between her country, the United States, and South Korea. But in the penthouse, she was still the chef. For a week, a fragile quiet descended. The children had nightmares. Sujin rarely left their sides. Yi Hyun spent long hours in his study on calls with lawyers and government liaisons. Annika cooked, simple, comforting food, seaweed soup for Sujin, chocolate porridge for the children. For Yi Hyun, a clear broth with daikon, something easy on a stomach clenched with stress. She moved through the kitchen with her usual precision, but the weight of the coming confrontation was a stone in her pocket. Seo and the remaining loyal guard treated her with a deference that was now tinged with something like reverence. They had seen the fire, they knew what she had done. One evening, Seo approached her as she was sharpening her knives. "The man you shot on the boat," he said quietly. "He died. The authorities listed it as an armed engagement during a kidnapping. There will be no inquiry." He paused. "You saved our family. I did not understand before, I understand now." He bowed deeply and left her to her blades. The summons came on the 8th day, a secure video conference. 3 windows would be open: the Americans, the Nigerians, and the Koreans. Annika was to provide her account and identify the evidence against General Ikji. She dressed not in her chef's coat, but in a dark suit she hadn't worn since her retirement. She set up in Yi Hyun's study. He offered to leave. She asked him to stay. "You are part of this story," she said. "You should hear it." The screens flickered to life. On one, the American agent and a senior CIA official. On another, 2 stern-faced men from her former agency, and between them, General Ikji in full uniform, his face a mask of calm authority. The third screen showed a senior Korean intelligence officer. The American opened. "This session is to address the actions of General Ibrahim Ikji and his conspiracy with foreign entities. Director Okafor, please proceed." Annika looked directly at the face of her former friend. "General, you authorized the operation to discredit and eliminate me. You used Dmitry Volkov as a cutout. You targeted the Kang family because you knew I would protect them. You used children as bait. Why?" Ikji's eyes were cold. "You are a traitor, Annika. You left the service and took sensitive knowledge with you. You were a risk." It was the party line, rehearsed and empty. Annika didn't blink. "The report you ordered me to bury, the one on the mining company. You weren't protecting the president's cousin. You were being paid. I found the transfers 2 days before I resigned. I left the evidence in a sealed file for you, hoping you would do the right thing. You didn't. You just came after me instead." A flicker in his eye, surprise, then fury. She had known. She had always known. The American official spoke. "We have obtained the financial records. $2.3 million routed through a shell company in Malta to an account controlled by the general's brother. The mining company was a front for Zhulong Holdings, the same Chinese conglomerate targeting Mr. Kang's company. This was never about Director Okafor's knowledge. It was about eliminating the one person who could connect you to the bribe and to the industrial espionage against Icarus Systems." The Korean officer leaned in. "General Ikji, you are hereby suspended from your position. You will be placed under house arrest pending extradition proceedings. The government of Nigeria has agreed." Ikji's mask shattered. He leaned toward the camera, his face contorted. "You think you've won? You are a fool, Annika. You left. You walked away from your duty. And for what? To play housekeeper for a capitalist? You disgrace the uniform." Annika's reply was quiet, final. "I left because the uniform was disgraced. By men like you. I cook for this family because I choose to. There is more honor in feeding children than in stealing for generals." She reached out and terminated the feed from his end. The screen went dark. The remaining officials completed their formalities. The matter was settled. As the screens went black, Yi Hyun let out a long, slow breath. "It's over." "For him," Annika said. "For me, the consequences are just beginning." She had publicly humiliated a powerful man and a corrupt system. There would be blowback, silent and bureaucratic. But in the days that followed, a different reality took shape. The story, carefully sanitized, leaked to the press. "Billionaire's chef unmasks corrupt general." The headlines were sensational, but the details were vague. To the world, Annika Okafor was a mysterious former official who had performed an act of heroism. In the intelligence community, she was a legend who had cleaned her own house. And in the penthouse, she was simply Annika. One evening, Yi Hyun found her in the kitchen, rolling dough for sujibai. He watched her for a moment. "The board is pressuring me to hire a new head of corporate security. They want a former 3-star general from the Korean military." Annika didn't look up. "That sounds wise. I don't want a general," he said. "I want you." She paused, her hands still in the dough. "I am a chef. You are the most formidable security architect I have ever met. You saved my children. You command absolute loyalty from men who used to work for me. You understand the threats in a way no one else can. I am offering you the position. Title, salary, authority, you report only to me." She wiped her hands on a cloth. "And who cooks your meals? You can do both, or hire a sous chef. I don't care. I want you to protect my family, officially." It was the ultimate inversion, made permanent. The chef would become the chief of security. She considered. The part of her that missed the work, the strategic challenge, stirred. but so did the part that loved the simplicity of a perfectly balanced broth. "I'll do it," she said, "on two conditions. One, I retain control of the kitchen. Food is the first security. I will vet every ingredient, every supplier. Two, you never again ask me about my past clearance. That door is closed." He agreed instantly. The following week, the appointment was announced internally. The staff was told Chef Okafor would be assuming the additional role of head of household security. The bodyguards, CEO included, now reported to her in both capacities. The first time she held a security briefing in the kitchen, with a simmering pot of kimchi jjigae on the stove, CEO had to hide a smile. The final surprising detail emerged a month later. Annika was in her new office, reviewing security protocols, when a sealed diplomatic pouch arrived. It was from the Nigerian government. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small velvet box. The paper was a formal letter, reinstating her security clearance at the highest level and appointing her as an external liaison to the Korean intelligence community, a symbolic but powerful role that granted her diplomatic protections. It was an apology and a shield all in one. She opened the box. Inside was not a medal, but a simple, heavy silver bracelet. Engraved on the inside were words in Igbo, her mother tongue. She recognized the proverb, "The knife that cuts the yam does not eat it." It was a recognition of thankless, necessary work. It was her grandmother's wisdom, cast in silver by the state. She wore it the next day, under the sleeve of her chef's coat, as she prepared Tuesday's meal. Yi Hyun came into the kitchen, as he had started to do, to sit at the counter and talk. He saw the bracelet peek out as she stirred. New jewelry. "A gift," she said, "from my former employers, a peace offering." He nodded, understanding it was all she would say. "What are you making?" "Jollof rice," she said. "A new version. I'm using gochujang instead of Scotch bonnets. A fusion." He smiled, a real one for the first time in weeks. "You're experimenting. The world is a fusion," she said. "We adapt." She plated the vibrant red rice, topped with a perfectly fried egg. She placed the bowl in front of him. He took a bite, closed his eyes. "It's quiet," he said, and loud at the same time. From the doorway, Sujin spoke. "The children are asking for you, Annika. They want you to read the story." Annika wiped her hands. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes." Sujin nodded, her eyes warm, no longer afraid. As Annika left the kitchen, she passed the 2 bodyguards posted in the corridor. They stood a little straighter as she passed, not because she was the security chief, because she was the woman who made the jollof rice and who had, with her own 2 hands, held their world together when it was falling apart. She entered the children's room. Minjun and Jae were in their beds. She sat in the chair between them, picking up the book. It was a Korean folktale about a humble potter who outsmarts a tiger. She began to read, her voice calm and steady. The children's breathing slowed. Down the hall in the kitchen, Yi Hyun finished his rice, the flavors of 2 continents meeting on his tongue. In the living room, Sujin played a soft melody on the piano. The penthouse, which had been a fortress, then a battlefield, was becoming a home. And Annika Okafor, former director, former chef, now guardian, read the last lines of the story. The potter, having used his wits to survive, returns to his wheel, to the simple shaping work of his hands. She closed the book. The children were asleep. She sat for a moment in the quiet, the silver bracelet cool against her wrist, the smell of jollof rice and gochujang still clinging to her coat. She had come to Seoul with 1 suitcase and a head full of secrets. She had taken a job because she knew how to care and how to fight. She had braided no hair, but she had saved a family. And when she saw a boat on fire, she didn't hesitate. She moved. Some people wait their whole lives for a cause worthy of their skills. Annika found hers not in a briefing room, but in a kitchen, in the eyes of 2 children, and in the quiet trust of a man who learned that the most powerful person in the room is sometimes the one who knows how to use a knife for more than just chopping onions. The story of Annika Okafor asks a single, unsettling question. Who is the most powerful person in the room? Is it the one with the most money, the loudest voice, the most visible authority? Or is it the one who knows how the world truly works, who moves through its hidden channels, and who chooses, every day, which rules to follow and which to quietly rewrite? We live in a world of visible hierarchies, the billionaire at the head of the table, the bodyguards at the door, the chef in the kitchen. We are trained to see power as a title, a uniform, a bank statement, but real power is often silent. It is the retired intelligence director who can still call a satellite. It is the grandmother's lesson that turns hands meant for holding into hands that can defend. It is the quiet competence that sees the threat in a child's game long before the alarms sound. Annika's journey from the briefing room to the kitchen and back to the command post is not just a thrilling inversion. It is a mirror. It shows us how often we mistake role for substance, how we dismiss the person in the service uniform, and how much hidden history walks beside us every day. The private chefs, the drivers, the personal assistants, their resumes might hold secrets that would reorder the entire room. This narrative is built on a factual foundation. The migration of senior intelligence officers to the private sector is a documented phenomenon, a brain drain where decades of institutional knowledge become a marketable commodity. The hierarchy of security clearances is real, a layered world of top secret and above top secret compartments that govern access to a nation's most dangerous truths. And the world of ultra-high net worth private staff is a realm of extreme discretion, where non-disclosure agreements are just the first layer of silence. Annika's final choice, to stay, to protect, to cook, redefines what winning looks like. It wasn't about returning to her old agency or claiming a public victory. It was about integration. It was about using every tool at her disposal, the spy's mind and the chef's hands, to build a sanctuary. She didn't reject her past. She used it to fertilize a new future. The bracelet from her government, an apology in silver, sits under her sleeve. The knife in her kitchen is still her favorite tool. She is both things, completely. So the next time you walk into a room, look past the obvious throne. The real authority might be the woman arranging the flowers, her eyes missing nothing. It might be the man driving the car, his calm suggesting he has navigated far more dangerous roads. We are surrounded by quiet legends, people who have lived first lives of astounding consequence before choosing a second act of simple, profound service. The ultimate status is not what you can demand, but what you quietly understand. It is not who kneels before you, but who you are willing to stand beside. Annika Okafor taught a billionaire that the most secure fortress is not made of bulletproof glass, but of loyalty, of jollof rice on a Tuesday, and of the unwavering certainty that someone in the house knows how to fight the monsters so you don't have to. Stay curious, look deeper. The most important story in the room is rarely the one being shouted from the center. It is the one being whispered from the edges by the person you almost didn't see. If you want more stories that pull back the curtain on hidden worlds, that challenge what you think you know about power and place, then subscribe. We have so many more layers to reveal.